There you go.
Well, we're going to talk about that actually. So, office hours switching to every other week for the time being.
Okay.
Andy, were you on this week's call?
Yes.
Okay, so then you know that. I mean, I think that, okay.
All right, should we kick it off, Michelle?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let me find weird. Bear with me. Bear with me. Okay, it's here. Okay, here we go. All right. Jim, well, let me just go down the agenda real quick. Hopefully we can have all time for all this, but we'll have Jim just to get your what we've seen since the release. And then if there are any wins, we'll ask the group. Michelle has a quick update on office hours. Andy, Amanda has some things to share. And then based on time remaining, we'll do a fireside chat with Chip. He's, I think, built a really awesome standard around SaaS security APIs. So we'll get right on into it. Jim, talk to us about what you've learned so far. What do people want monitored? And what have you? What's been the feedback post App Wizard launch?
Yeah, so the feedback has been phenomenal so far. People, they love the fact that we're extending beyond the core applications, and we've had countless calls about that since last week when we announced. We're officially now up over 100, I think, folks that have signed the petition. So this is going to be just a drum that we're going to have to continue to beat, until the end of Write a Boom. That's what it comes down to. And, we're going to start doing specific campaigns to make sure people are aware of it, and they sign it. They don't have to be a customer of SaaS alerts. That's the thing. They just should want better, SaaS data or security data, excuse me, in APIs. That's all we're asking for, right? So I'm in the process now. A number of private equity firms have taken note of what we're doing, and are also looking to lend support, which is great. In terms of the apps themselves, Liran can probably educate. I know for a fact, number one so far has been QuickBooks Online, which is no surprise. But I know Ignite is one that people have asked for, and specifically yesterday, I got that one. But Liran, do you want to chime in with other ones that have been requested thus far?
Sure. So I'm looking at our internal board, and Halo PSA is kind of an outbound PSA wizard that we're working on. That work is in progress, but I'm not going to get too much into that and steal Adam's thunder. So that's currently number one on the outbound side. Then we have those items that Jim mentioned, and some others that we have is Hoodoo and Duo. And the Duo work is actually in active progress as we speak. And Duo, interestingly enough, is doing exactly what Jim is talking about. And they're building an activity log that is going to tell you who's doing what type of situation. So they already have a login log, and we're going to get that information. And they are in beta with the activity log, which is really great news for all of us who are interested in Duo monitoring.
Really, I'm glad to hear about Duo, Liran, because that is one tool that, they have a free partner program for all MSPs to use internally, right? So I'm not here pushing you guys to change, solutions, but they are good, really good that way. The other thing I really like about them is they have the inherent push notification, Jim, that you could have used to in essence thwart the MGM breach, where you could have said, I want to validate that you truly are who you say you are. You can do a push while you're on the phone with somebody. So good stuff. Any other things, Jim?
I know Andy just mentioned, Kaseya One is on his list. I remember mentioning it last week as well. I'm going to, I'll reach out to Kaseya specifically and ask them, so we can take a look at their API and see what we can do there.
Maybe a campaign. It's like, on the list, it's like, are you going to make Santa's list? You could do a campaign in the last few weeks here, Jim. Who's going to make the list?
Yeah.
I
Not
was
very
going to
nice.
say, could you guys please address any MSP tool that is common amongst your user base as perfect? I think to start with us would be very valuable.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think obviously, we've got majority of the RMMs out there right now. We integrate with the majority of the PSAs, and we're adding Halo. Ignite is one people have asked for because it's kind of a specific MSP kind of Dropbox type tool. We'll definitely get to as many of the MSP tools as we possibly can. There's no question about that. It's just, we give those away. So we're not making any incremental dollars on the MSP tools. And we know that, and we're happy to do it. I guess, one thing that we just are looking for is as long as we continue to do that, our community support in terms of pushing our message.
I was alluding to the app wizard and that integration to our MSP tools so that we can bring that in if we're not capturing that data currently.
I don't understand.
So Kaseya One is one of our tools. It's one of our authentication pieces. And to use
Right.
that as an example, there's, I think, one for ConnectWise. There might be others besides Duo that could be used by MSPs that the app wizard could be very helpful around helping us be more secure internally as well.
Okay.
And equity groups, equity financing would be driving that bus, I think, as well. They wouldn't have another Kaseya event, in other words.
Right. Yeah. There's definitely a lot of folks that have taken interest in what we're doing. Get a
Cool.
lot of inbound stuff these days.
Good stuff, Jim. All right. Does anybody have a win of the week? And that question's to everybody on the call, the MSPs on the call, like how they use SaaS alerts to thwart a BEC or an account compromise or something nefarious in nature. Bueller, anybody? Let's see. Adam agreed, but I don't think we agreed about that. All right. All right. So no, Michelle, let's move to you.
All right, I'm really disappointed. I know you guys are winning every week, so I think I'm gonna have to start calling on people if start participating, because I know you guys are crushing it every week. But yeah, the only thing I really have is office hours. We briefly touched on before at the beginning of the call. Anthony and Ben are gonna pause for the holidays, and then they're gonna pick it up again January 16th. And for the time being, it's going to be bi-weekly. Things can change. It's very fluid based on your feedback, but we're going to switch to bi-weekly and see how that goes.
All right. Amanda, are you with us?
Yep, I'm here.
All
So
right.
we had a reports release, and so I just wanted to go through a couple of the items before I share my screen, though. Just wanted to say some of you might have noticed the threat mitigation report was released, but we did have to remove that from the production release. We realized there were some gaps in the data. As we're moving quickly to try to release these items, sometimes we miss a couple of these pieces. So we're working in the background right now to fix that, and it'll shortly be released next week. So let me share my screen and we can go over the report items that we did release. All right, so hopefully you guys can see view reports now.
We can.
So there's great. So for the SaaS cyber assessment report, we made an update based off of feedback that we received directly on this call and from from our community board as well. Once you've picked your organization and you've entered your date range for the report and you click run report, when the table loads, the very first graph that you have down here is the incident breakdown. And we were asked by multiple people if there's a way to filter this a little bit more easily so that when you share it out, it retains the filter and you're able to show just the key events you wanted to share with your customers. So now you can come to this drop down box, pick the event that you want to, or events that you want to show, and it'll then create the graph with just those events, and then you can share it out with just the graph looking in the state that you want to look at it with the customer. So that's the first item that we've changed. The next is for the organization vulnerability assessment report. Now, again, this is the Fortify report that we currently have. We made some updates in here. So once you pick your organization you want to run this against and click run report, the very bottom is where we've made the changes that I want to talk about today. Specifically, this table is now no longer called major risks. We have available actions as the first tab. And if you hover over the tooltip, it's going to let you know available actions are those that can be completed based off of your current licensing. So if you were to open up Fortify and go in to perform an action, these are going to be the actions that you can currently perform. Then the next tab is actually licensable actions. And if you hover again, this is going to let you know that, you know, if you were to upgrade to whatever this minimal licensing is that's referenced here, these are the actions that you could perform. Completed are therefore the ones that you have actually completed, and the MFA hasn't been changed. But just to give everybody a little bit of clear indication what we're trying to show here with the actions. And this licensable actions, you know, then helps you tie into the conversation with any of the dials you want to use here if you need to speak to people about upgrading. And then the last item that I wanted to show today was that we have a new report called the Respond Rule Trigger Report. This is meant to be an executive report at the organization level. So again, you'll pick your organization that you want to run it for. You'll pick your date range and click run report. It's going to give you a graph of the total. Oh, I need to pick a better illustration here. Let's see.
No, that
It'll
one's
give
not
you
gonna get there.
No, you don't think so?
Nope.
Yeah. Sorry, I should have looked at this before, but I didn't think of it.
I don't think that one either.
No, we
Oh,
got
there you
some.
go.
So it's going to give you a graphical representation of the different statuses of alerts. So you have ignored, auto-ignored, approved, auto-approved, failed, or remediation completed. Again, it's interactive. If you were to look for just the auto-approved, you know, you can click on the remediation completed. It's going to remove it from the table if that's what you're trying to show. So you can interact with the graph if you'd like, hover over it, see where the statistics are. But if you scroll further down, you're going to get those buckets, and it's going to show you exactly the total number. And if you click on the specific bucket, then the bottom of the report will load. That'll give you the further information about what, you know, triggered and what status it was in.
Take logins.
And
So
Amanda, the
those were
table at the bottom obviously shows, you know, on per client, exactly which remediations have been completed and the user and so forth. So that becomes a really, really useful piece in the, you know, in the category of what have you done for me lately, which customers always ask. This gives them really concrete information on, you know, how the MSP literally saved their neck.
So hold on, Amanda, I have a question for you, but before that, there's some comments here. So Adam, can you expand on what you're saying with logins? Rich is that, well, see if Adam can come off mute. Rich is saying, are they layered for severity? Is that to Amanda's comment, Rich? Amanda's presentation, Rich? Yeah. So Amanda, you seeing Rich's question?
No, sorry,
He's
I
saying,
have to.
he's saying, are these layered for severity?
This specific report here, no, this is showing it's by the respond rule status. It's not the alert severity that's associated with it.
Got it. Andy.
I have two questions. One, how far back does the date range go for this type of report, Amanda?
It goes back pretty far. I
More
mean,
than a quarter? In other words, I
yeah.
could do this once a quarter type of thing?
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
Andy, we save all of our data for everything's saved for a full year.
Awesome. Here's
So-
the next question. Going down
I
to,
was just gonna say though, caveat though is like we introduced this auto approved and auto ignored in the last few months. So only things that have been available, you know, for that status will show for that date range.
awesome. And if you go down to the bottom table where
Mhm.
you are laying these out, being able to sort these by severity, or that would be a great to have a column that talks about severity. So I could have it by date, I could have it by severity, but in the description, or have the option to change description to be the rule description in respond instead of the rule name and who wrote it. I'm saying then I could take this table and say, this is why we wrote this rule, and this is what's being triggered against this particular alert for this company. And I can put it in customer ease instead of something that I have to then explain otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, so again, because I'm using a little bit of junk testing
Yep.
data. So this is actually the rule name.
Yep.
And this is actually the account that it was run against.
I'm looking for the description that is saved in respond that would say, this is what this rule does. So that
Yeah,
yeah.
I understand, and
Okay.
I take the feedback. I just want to make sure this was. I know this is a little bit harder to read if you're not sure what chip test 113 really is, and so that's the organization. Just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Thanks. That was my ask, is to be able to
Yep.
sort these in a severity order, and to be able to have a description that is readable by in a quarterly review or monthly review of cloud security.
Sure, understood.
Seems like Rich, you were asking very similar. Is that where your mindset was, Rich, with what Andy just described?
Yeah, I definitely think there's overlap, at least
Yes.
in yeah, thanks, Rich. Didn't know if you could jump in.
Amanda,
Yeah, just
go, Rich, please go.
yeah, it was just on an a quick scan level. Yeah, you want the most severe things to be highlighted. That's the only thing I was looking at.
Sure. Understood. Thank you.
Yeah, we can definitely add as enhancement request, and adding the severity column I don't think is going to be too difficult.
No, it shouldn't be.
For the reports team, that one would be easier. Andy, I'm still not 100% clear, to be honest with you, on what you're looking for on the description side.
So I'm looking to be able to describe what the rule is doing here, instead of having it be who wrote the action and say this was applied. So if I'm in the respond rule, I want to be able to describe what this rule is doing and why, and then have that come up here as the reason why this action took place. Because I want them to not have me explain why it's happening. I want them to say, this is clearly why this rule is written. Someone attempted to access or share a file outside of a geographical location. You experienced impossible travel. That didn't make sense to us. We disabled the account. These things are happening, especially if I look at this from a evaluation period, to be able to say, you know, they don't have to understand all these pieces, but these are the things that we began to see happening. Is that making better sense or no?
What's not making sense to me is where this comes from, you know, out of the respond product itself.
Okay.
Where my mind was, Chip and Amanda, I'm just wondering if you could go back to the first report you showed, where you sliced this, hey, the actual events have been yes, thank you. The reason I'm curious about this, Chip, and keep me honest here, from you're like about the conversations with your customers. Let me have her run this first. I just want to show it. Okay, just leave it like that for just a second. So in my head, the conversation with the client is, look, cyber events aren't a one-time thing. Like and I'm sorry not for being eloquent. I would normally be a little bit more eloquent, but run with me on this, Chip. Like, you're explaining to a customer, like, look, a threat actor doesn't typically just go, I do A, B, and C. They can, and I'm in, and et cetera, et cetera. But often there's a lot of smoke before the fire starts, right? It's a chain of events that leads into a compromise, a BEC, data exfiltration, malware, whatever they're going to eventually do. What I love about this is this is to me is telling the story that I want to tell the customer. Look, I got concerns. Like, we've got activity from threat actors looking like they're doing this, and this. And based on your industry, this is typically how these threat actors do attack. You don't have to go into this as a TTP, et cetera, et cetera. My point is, this can lead into a tabletop. This could lead into talking about their critical systems and what if a threat actor eventually did get in. Are we prepared? Should we do a business? Let's talk about business continuity plans. That to me, this is a beautiful report for that conversation. Am I seeing this right, Chip?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's kind of always been the purpose of the cyber assessment report, is to send it monthly or quarterly as you're doing your follow-up cadence with your customers, whatever they are, and then use this as a mechanism to continue the ongoing conversation about security. That's one of the hardest things to bring across to end user organizations, I think, is that security isn't a once and done thing, right? This isn't the late 1990s where you could slap in a firewall, lock everything down and then not have to think about anything else for the next year. It just doesn't work that way anymore. It's a moving target. I'm not sure it really even worked that way then, but that was certainly people's perception. But it's much more of a moving target now. And as we talk about all the time, the biggest threat is still always inside the four walls of the business, whether those are virtual walls or not, and whether it's malicious, and intentional, or whether it's just people doing things they shouldn't do. And this report is designed to bring that forward.
But I think it also shows the external activity, Chip, because these days, as you talk about, it's accounts, right? I'm a threat actor and I get credentials. I might as well look like I'm on the inside of the walls, right? That I'm a employee of the organization. What not telling you guys to do more work on this, but would be incredible eventually is if we extrapolated the TTP and go, hey, look, often, right, if you're seeing this type of technique, and you are going to see this type of result, right? These are the results. These are the things that a threat actor will do, so that we can have it more like less like, again, a business owner will go, okay, what's an IAM event? I don't quite understand. If you go, look, this leads to X, Y, and Z, so these are the possible outcomes from this type of, technique and tactic. So anyway, that's where my mind went.
Gotcha.
So, Andy, I see you got a hand up. Andy, before we go to you, just anybody else have comments, questions on where we're headed here? Corey, I'm curious, would you use that, or do you guys use that at all in that manner, or help tell your customers to?
Well, yes and no. Reports are the biggest pain point on my side because I get nothing but complaints on a weekly basis that the reports aren't good enough, they're too much, they're too little. It's hard to please everybody when it comes to reports. I get what a lot of MSPs are trying to do, and they're trying to provide most of them are trying to provide a one-page slap down on a table on a conference room, say this is what your money's going towards.
Right.
The customers don't want to hear the details, right? You want to say, okay, what am I paying for and where is this going towards? The most advanced reporting mechanisms that I have seen, and this might make Liran throw his headset across the room, is widget based. So giving someone the ability in the platform to select categories of what they want on their report, because that's really the only way to please everybody is, okay, what data do you need in the report? Because some people want this level of detail. Me, I want as much metrics and as much information as you can throw at me. But then there's people on the other side that, again, they just want that one page. Give me a quick 100-foot overview understanding of what's going on in my environment and where are my risks and what have you done for me lately. And that can only really be achieved by having like a full widget type, like, okay, what categories do you want? Select, select, select. It generates it for you. So we, like I said, we run across all different gamuts on a weekly basis where, like I said, it's too little, it's too much. And it's unfortunately something that I don't think will ever get fixed, and you won't be able to please everybody.
I think.
I was just gonna say, like, we've gone down this road with certain other things, and I would say, Corey, that addresses maybe 10% of the overall population in terms of our customers, in terms of them actually using something that gives them infinite possibilities. Right? Most people want stuff that's just completely templated for them. That may or may not be some people on this call. I don't know, but we've got over 900 MSPs now. And when you give them that level of power, most of them don't use it.
Yeah.
No, what I would say though, Jim, is we often want reports through the lens of the MSP, not the lens of the customer. Like to Corey's point, like what does it mean to the customer? By the way, Andy, Adam, do you mind giving us some insight on that? No problem mentioning a competitor, but what are they like? Ben took the words out of my mouth.
Well, so I say it's my clients that said that they really like Huntress reports. I think I mean, if anybody else on here has seen them, they probably know what I'm talking about. They're quite informative in terms of the information that's actually included in the report. I mean, it's growing over the last few years. I think it started out as 2 pages. It's something like 5 pages now. So they include information about, ongoing current threats that are out there on the landscape. There's obviously information about the specific things that they have identified in the client's environment during that previous month. It's very high level. It's very colorful. It's very graphical. Very non-technical in many cases. So I think that's why end users quite like the look of it.
You're talking about their EDR reports, correct, Adam, in this case?
Yes, correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and they do a good job. I think that's the point. Like Adam, you've kind of said it in a way of my conversation with Chip. Like, what's happening in your industry? Like, okay, these things are going on. Oh, and by the way, here's some threat reports that are relevant to your financial organization. Your right now, what's hot, right? Utilities, water utilities, right? So I think that's where all of a sudden you can have a true conversation around that. Is that fair? Adam?
Sorry, yes. I didn't know you were asking me that. Yeah, exactly. I think, I mean, to Corey's point, I agree, actually. There's not a lot of information in there for us MSPs, but the fact that the clients love the simplicity of them, I guess, speaks volumes, doesn't it? Perhaps, we're in danger of information overload to our clients. They're not technical. They don't care about the technology as much as we do. So probably providing them with too much information is turning them off. Most clients don't actually want the reports that we provide, but it's part of our contract that we do. So I guess if we can dumb it down and simplify it as much as possible, that's probably what they're more interested in.
I think you just said that perfectly. It's like if we had a bunch of end users on this call and we showed, what would you want to see? Would you want to see that bunch of technical terms, or would you want to see something that speaks to your business, right? In simplistic terms. And I think we know the answer. So really good feedback. Thanks for the input, by the way, Corey and everybody on chat there. Before I go to Chip, Andy, you had your hand up. Did you want to say?
I've actually been communicating with Chip about my concept here, and maybe it's a new field, Chip, in the rule itself that would be customer facing and one that would be internal facing. but the idea is to take the description in the respond rule and have it be a customer facing description of what this rule really meant, because IAM unsuccessful may not be clear, but I'm trying to raise this to a non-technical discussion saying this is how we see an alarm going off, right?
So you're saying it's not the description field from respond itself.
No, that's where I was going with it initially. I'm saying that, but the way that you've used the description field for the respond rule is for the internal reference of the MSP. And I'm suggesting we could scribe it differently for an external reference to the customer, say, this is why this rule was triggered, and this is the ramification of it. I'm just attempting to get that summary report where you have potentially sorted by severity. Hey, we blocked this, or we took this action because this occurred.
Good stuff.
Yeah, I just have to take this offline because I'm trying to figure out how we can do this in code, Andy. And
it's a text field.
It seems like something that the MSP needs to manage on their own. So we'll take it offline.
All right.
Yeah. One of the things I want to come back to the reports. Like one of the things I tell people all the time is that, and Ben used to do the VCAO stuff. I used to do a ton of quarterly business reviews back when I was an MSP. And one of the things that I felt like people over time, they didn't want to take, especially executives didn't want to take the reviews anymore because they were too technical in nature. Right. And it didn't matter how great you made a chart. Their eyes would always glaze over when you talked about how many viruses you were able to quarantine from month to month, quarter to quarter, whatever it may be. And one of the things that I like about at least the data that we collect is that you, the MSP, you have a key. The customer has a key. Together, you unlock the code. What's the code in this situation? The code is what's actually happening with the end users in your customer. So if I'm looking at the executive report and I'm seeing that, Bobby downloaded exponential amount of information that maybe he wasn't supposed to out of OneDrive, maybe he's doing a project. I don't know as the MSP. I don't know what Bobby's deal is. But you, the customer, you do know. And maybe you know that Bobby was laid off or gave his notice, I should say, a month ago. So I'm giving you information. You have information because you know your own business. Together, we come together to put the entire story together. And I think those are some of the things that if I'm an MSP today using our reports, that's what I'm highlighting.
And again, as I said earlier, it could be a threat actor acting as Bobby, and Bobby's just fine, but doesn't know someone's doing his job for him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, what Jim gets described is the reason why the reports are structured around the top 10, fingers quotes, bad actors in the organization. We don't list what every single account does unless you run a specific report for an individual user account. We have that too, but those summary reports list the top 10 things that, that somebody on the business side, not the MSP, but their customer, should have their attention drawn to. Andrew just downloaded 1,000 files this month. He's never done that before, and I'm just going to run right down my list. Then Ben and Adam and Amy and Amir all show up right underneath that with the activity that they did because they were unusual.
By the way, Jim, Bobby's pretty pissed because he signed the petition. Just want you to know.
Bobby is? Okay.
All right, Chip, let's chat. All right. So we're going to start off, Chip's done I think an amazing job. You're going to get to a little bit of a peek to I think call it a white paper or literally a framework he's building of what good.
I think you're really overstating that, Andrew. You're building up way too much attention. Okay, but keep going.
All right. I already put it out there at CRM that it's one of the big changes in security industry, Chip. So, but but you were going to talk about it in a minute, but you know, Chip, you and I were having a conversation like last night, and I just said to you, okay, think about these, you know, things like QuickBooks, and we were even talking about the core banking applications that have now been shifted to the cloud. Like I said, Chip, for 100, you know, wave a wand, why is it that logs aren't available in these mission critical systems? And that's where I wanted to start the conversation. I thought it was really interesting insight you had.
Well, I'll preface my comments the same way I did with you last night, which is, you know, on this topic, everything I'm about to say is a guess, because I really don't know. You know, I can't be in the mind of product manager or developer at any of these companies. But the kind of stab at it I took last night was that going back to my years as an accounting systems consultant around Sage products, CRM, around Goldmine, you know, all those things were client server applications, and most of the stuff that we see that's turned into SaaS applications now started off with a client server application architecture, and people didn't think then about logging security issues in the way that we have to think about it now, you know, that Microsoft and Google do really well, by the way, and Salesforce for SaaS applications. So I think that's part of it. I think that, you know, a company like Intuit, they're very focused on financial transaction stuff, right? So their API is great at telling you who's updated the general ledger and you know, who's created a report, you know, a P&L, that sort of stuff. But they just don't pick up the security information that makes it interesting to us, everybody on this call, as to who is doing what where from what device. You know, that security side of it is what's lacking. So I just think it's an older mindset, and people just haven't become aware. You know, as we talked last night, Salesforce is kind of the granddaddy of the SaaS application trend, right? They were one of the first there to really turn the CRM world, the customer account management world, on its head. And so they've had a long time to get where they are, and they've got a pretty good API. But having said that, Salesforce's API doesn't come close to revealing the kind of security events that Microsoft and Google Workspace do. So I really think that there's just a shift that is still waiting to occur among the different industry sectors that have decided, hey, we've got to go to SaaS because it's the only way to go to market.
Yeah, interesting. You know, one thing I've never even asked, but what type of logging are you getting out of the RMMs that are in the cloud now, Chip?
It's pretty solid. I mean, you know, from the RMMs, we get all the device data that we're after. We get information about how the users, you know, the technical users at the MSP are using the RMM, what they're logging in, what kind of activity they're taking. So there's pretty good data there. I mean, I think the RMM industry itself has had plenty of reasons to wake up and read the tea leaves and say, hey, we've got to have very detailed activity logs because we're sitting in the middle. We are the middleman of the supply chain attack. So, right, you know, we've got to log everything. Yeah,
good stuff. All right. So the next thing is this framework you developed called SaaS. That's my pronunciation.
SaaS.
Depends what, you know, what your language is. I think it could come out a lot of different ways here, Chip.
Yeah.
But I think as we know, like everything needs some kind of either structure or framework. So can you give us the perspective of, you know, before we get into some of the fundamentals of it, the background, and I kind of I put the abstract here, but we'd love it in your own words too. And the reason I put this above it is this came from a report that, you know, talking about SaaS applications and why there's so many compromises, and they literally pointed out the lack of collection logs as one of the biggest issues.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, look, the background to this is really straightforward. This is actually just a a 20-minute brain dump from me about 2 weeks ago, as I knew we were leading up to this whole campaign. You know, I started thinking, well, if we're going to be jumping up and down and asking for a standard, I guess we better put one together. And this isn't complete by any stretch. I'm kind of stunned that we're already talking about this. I haven't even shared this internally yet, other than with Liran. So, and he's been so busy, I know he hasn't even looked at it. So this is going to be quite the first preview. But the whole goal here is to just, for me, I was thinking about the issue of, all right, you know, what does prevent a SaaS application provider from tackling any project? And this includes us, by the way. Like, you guys come to us with ideas, you know, every single week, many of which we like, and we can't get to coding them anywhere near as fast as we want, right? So when anybody comes along and says, give us blah, you know, the immediate block is you got to start thinking about, all right, well, how am I going to implement that? How am I going to do this? What does it need to look like? So my thinking was, we want to provide a super simplified version of what's necessary for a SaaS application to provide, you know, in an API for any third party, you know, company, us, customers themselves, you know, it doesn't really matter who, to take in some core information and get meaningful security data out of it. And a lot of the meaningfulness comes from the ability to correlate the actions between different applications, and to count and correlate how many times the actions take place in the application. But when I broke it down, I realized, like, this is actually really simple. You know, there's 3 primary categories of things that need to be looked at. And there's really 10 kind of activities that have to be logged in order to construct a pretty wide range of meaningful security information about what's going on with the user account. So, you know, again, this doesn't even come close to scratching the surface with what a Graph API from Microsoft, or the Google Workspace API will do, or the Salesforce API, but it doesn't need to. And that's the story that I want us to tell. You know, when we get this petition together and have MSP start helping us address the SaaS marketplace, you know, we want the story to be that this is really easy to do. It doesn't have to be a years-long project to harvest and create this kind of data. You know, most of it is stuff you've already got. You just got to make it available. You know, QuickBooks in particular, we keep going back to them because we've looked at them the most. You know, they're going to have to make some changes in terms of grabbing IP and device information and that sort of stuff. But it's nothing that's difficult to do. Like, for developers, they all know how to do this stuff. The browser gives you the information that you need. So I'll pause there and just let you react to that.
Yeah. Any comments thus far? It's making sense. And I think the reason for this too, Chip, is we needed to show what good looks like and how to enable the partners. If we're asking them to go, you know, evangelize, give them a document, make it easy, right?
Yeah.
To communicate that, you know, to the people. I gotta believe though, Chip, a company like Intuit, it's not that they don't have that data. I imagine it's not about sharing, because if you think about breach notification or something like that, in the event that they had a major compromise, I can't imagine they would tell Mandiant, yeah, I'm not sure where that came from.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think they do have it. It's just making a decision that it's important to expose it to third parties, so that they can work with it.
Yeah. Interesting. And it's going to be interesting, you know, Intuit's still publicly traded, fair? I think they are.
I believe so.
I believe so. Like, it would be interesting. I'm not hoping for a compromise, but it would be interesting to tabletop that with the SEC. You know, God forbid there was a supply chain event and now a bunch of companies got compromised. It's almost like Microsoft all of a sudden had to go, yeah, I guess we're going to give everybody our logs now, after the storm incident.
Yeah.
You know, and you wonder what the SEC would be saying to Intuit if they're like, you didn't do what? You didn't have this available for who? So just kind of interesting as you think through what SolarWinds CISO is going through right now. The Okta team right now is probably what they're going through, the scrutiny, and again, another public company anyway. So
Yeah, well, we talked about the SolarWinds thing, I don't know, 4 or 5 weeks ago. That case with their CISO, that's gonna open a lot of people's minds if there's a conviction there, if that winds up, in a big fine or some jail time, or both. I think that's going to wake a lot of people up. I'll tell you what, I would imagine that CISOs at every public company are going to be demanding more money in the wake of that, and bigger staffs and bigger budgets.
I'm just surprised the Microsoft, saying we're going to release our logs didn't light a fire under, what you guys are trying to do here with your petition. But why these three, Jim?
Well, there's certainly more that you can add, but again, we're going for simplicity here. So, what are the basic things that help you recognize when an account is being used? Certainly identity access data, where's the account being used from, when, on what devices? It's as really as simple as that. That information, there's tons of trend data there because most people log in from the same devices from the same place at the same times of day. Like there's definitely harvestable patterns. And when people step outside of that, we can see it. Policy and configuration. And you'll notice I dropped the M, identity and access management, here, because in my mind, the simplicity of this is moving anything that's a change, like a password change, that's policy and configuration, because password changes are often done by administrators and pushed down to the end user. Sure, you have SSPR in the Microsoft world that some people use, and Google, like every app has the ability for you to sort of self-serve password reset, but nevertheless, it's a configuration change. Any kind of policy, especially where you're giving people administrative access that didn't have it before. Somebody requests from one administrator that they need administrative rights to a certain component of the product or certain files. That's always interesting information. Obviously, we can tell from what SaaS Alerts as a company has done and others have done with Fortify that there's a mountain of policy and configuration options for some SaaS tools. And anytime someone's changing them, that can have an impact on the threat landscape, right? On the exposure. So we want to track those whenever they occur. And then last but not least, as we've said many times, the goal of all hacking is data theft in the end. And data theft happens lots of different ways. It happens sometimes in bulk downloads. Sometimes it happens with forwarding emails. Sometimes it, happens with the classic ransomware approaches. But nevertheless, keeping a track on what's going on with the business data, whether it's a QuickBooks file or SharePoint data, or Ignite data that's stored there, or S3 buckets, or it really doesn't matter where it is. If it's moving around, if it's moving from the cloud to the local and then from the local to somewhere else, that tells you a lot about what's going on with the account. So, we've learned over the 3 years of doing this and watching now hundreds of millions of events that with just this, you can get enough information to fairly accurately identify a compromised account.
Awesome. All right. All right, so talk about, if you can, got probably about 8-9 minutes left here, Chip. But out of these parameters, if I'm an MSP having a conversation with, a SaaS provider, pretty straightforward for them, Chip. Anything, that we should talk about here?
I mean, look, I think everyone on this call would certainly recognize all of these parameters as elements that they see day to day in the logs that they evaluate themselves, if they're SaaS Alerts customers, in the information that we present. And again, it's all about answering the question of who did what, with what, to whom, from where. Like, you can take those base things, and once you have that information, you can construct trends, and you can construct from those trends anomalies. And those anomalies are what tell you when you may have a compromised account. That's how Respond works. If you guys, those of you on the call that use Respond regularly, what you're really doing is you're walking through, a visual solution that's creating code in the background that creates a watcher in our data set. And that watcher is there to answer those questions. Who did what, from where, to what, when, and how many times. And that's really what these parameters are all about identifying.
Jim, it was cool to see you guys in your App Wizard press release say the word SOAR for the first time. Any reason for that?
Well, you've been telling us, Andrew, it's what we are.
I have.
So, the guy that, invented Run It Boom, I mean, shouldn't we just be listening to him? Call it a day. But specifically to App Wizard, one thing that everyone on this call should know, and some of you may have, if you haven't renewed with us already, you have emails in your inbox or will soon about December renewals. And just a reminder, like every existing partner, when you sign with us, you get all the App Wizard stuff for free. Like all the new applications that are coming in to the platform in the next year or 3 years, you will be able to monitor on behalf of your customers for no additional costs, which I hope people realize is a massive market advantage. Let's just take Okta, for instance. And I was on a call yesterday. Liran, Amanda, and I were on a call yesterday with one of our smaller MSPs who they don't use a ton of us right now. They use a little bit, but now that we have Okta, they're going to start using it on everybody. And he said that they fully appreciate now, and they're an early adopter, so they get early pricing, that they're going to be able to go to all of their Okta customers, and they have a lot of them, and say, look, we can now monitor Okta for you, and we're going to charge you, the $200-$300 per application per month just for Okta. They know based on what's going on with Okta, people are going to buy it. And that's going to be a massive new incremental revenue stream for them. So I just, I wanted to put it out there because I'm hoping that people understand that. Mike, thank you for saying that is a big deal.
Yeah, it's wonders for the hard cogs, right, Jim?
Yeah, exactly.
You'd like to have had that as an MSP. If your vendors were telling you the zero cost to monitor your stuff.
It would be awesome if, like, with our Google Compute bill, like we got Elastic for free. What that would do to, our cost of goods. I mean, that's basically what we're talking about here.
It's fantastic. All right, Chip, and we can kind of close today out by talking about these 3 areas that you kind of put out there in a little bit greater detail. You said some of it so far, but within each one, you go into a little detail. Anything you want to point out here?
Yeah, again, trying to come up with the easiest standard that gives the necessary information, but with the minimal effort. And taking those 3 categories of identity, access, policy configuration, and data sharing, for me, this is what comes to mind as the bare minimum that's going to provide meaningful correlatable data to identify account compromises. So pretty straightforward. Again, I hope this is super simple. Like anybody that would be on this call evaluating this would look at this and go, yeah, this is a no-brainer. I can explain this to anyone, including customers. So that's the goal. That's why we're putting this together. When we finish this up, it'll include a bunch of examples, in JSON form of what events should look like, to try and make this super simple for developers to pick it up and run with it. But that's the goal. And certainly now that it's in the wild with this crew, any feedback from folks here is appreciated. The only thing that I ask is keep in mind first and foremost that the idea here is to make it minimalistic and as simple as possible.
Yeah, I think that's important, because if you go to somebody and say you want, this massive menu of information, Chip, it can be overwhelming. I know, like if someone came to you, right, and said, hey, we want to integrate with you, but we need all these things.
Yep. Super low cost of adoption. That's what we're after here. This is not to be a wall, it's to be a curb that people can step over.
Nice. Any comments? It's a great job, Chip. I love the simplicity of it, and I think you guys are going to do really well. And Jim, in the whole petition, I think once this is available, I think it's a really, like, we do a webinar on this. You can come on the cyber call and talk about this new MVP of SaaS standards that you guys are driving from the API, but really well done. Really, really well done.
Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah. Comments from anybody on this? And I know the quote unquote white paper is in the works to get to you guys. See you, Ben. All right, Jim, I think we got crickets here, so we'll wrap it up about 90 seconds early.
Sorry, guys. I just want to remind everyone going forward, we won't be admitting the note takers. We want to see you here. We want you to participate. However, if you can't make it to a call, these are recorded. We'll have a great summary posted on YouTube, but just don't be surprised if we kick you out. Not you, your note taker. We won't kick you out.
Awesome. All right. With that note, we'll kick everybody out now, Michelle.
All right. Sounds good.
See you, everybody.
Have a great weekend.
Bye, everybody.
Next week, everybody.
Happy holidays to all.
Yeah.
Likewise.
Happy holidays.
Yeah.